Treatment of word finding and aphasia. This treatment method is response elaboration training. Definition of aphasia is aphasia results from an acquired brain injury. This means that aphasia only can be aphasia if a person fully acquired language beforehand and then had an acquired brain injury. For this reason, children will most often not be diagnosed with aphasia. Second point is has to have deficits in both expressive and receptive language. That means both input and output. Third one is that does not require deficits to be the same extent in both areas, meaning that the severity does not need to be the same extent in both expressive and receptive language, but it must affect all four modalities of language, which include auditory comprehension, reading comprehension, spoken expression, and written expression. Aphasia is a problem that is noticeable regarding language and is disproportionately worse than any other impairment or deficit that may be caused by the brain damage. So there may be other issues that are caused by the brain damage, but this part of language is going to be significantly worse than any other. Cannot be said to be caused by dementia, confusion, sensory loss, or motor dysfunction. The only cause of aphasia is because the language center of the brain is impaired. Aphasia manifests itself in reduced availability of vocabulary, which means that the words are not available to the person, reduced efficiency, which is the speed and application of syntactic rules, reduced auditory retention span, that they can't hold what a person says long enough, like they'll forget what a person said, impaired efficiency in input and output, which is expressive and receptive language. There are word-finding treatments. One of the most common characteristics of an aphasia client is word-finding deficits, which means that they have a hard time finding words. A meta-analysis conducted by Weisenberg and Mahoney investigated the efficacy of word-finding treatments on aphasic individuals. They investigated over 44 studies and concluded that the therapy is efficacious. However, the gains varied across different approaches. So there are many, many, many different types of word-finding treatments. Some of them are obviously going to be more prevalent to different types of aphasia, as well as they're going to have different kinds of results. Asha lists a few of the many treatments methods used. Word retrieval cueing strategies. This approach provides the client with additional information to prompt word recall. For example, beginning sounds of a word or giving contextual cue. Gestural facilitation of naming, using gestures to facilitate verbalization, and semantic feature analysis treatment, that the client tries to identify the word by semantic features of the target word. So, for example, let's say like quiet is trying to get to the word library. Definition of response elaboration training, in short, is RET. Response elaboration training is a verbal treatment that helps the aphasic patient to increase the content and length of their utterances. This treatment method is designed to promote creative use of language rather than limit the speaker's productions to specific predetermined responses. RET entails elicitation of verbal reproductions of the speaker's choice in response to action pictures. Then the clinician then models or elaborates on the client's response to expand upon his or her original production. So I'm going to explain more in the next slide exactly what goes on. Right here is a short clip of RET in session, and it's just a clear clip of how it happens. The steps of RET steps. So the first one is that the clinician will elicit, is going to try to get the client to elicit verbal response to a picture. So the clinician is going to show the client a simple picture, a man coughing into a tissue, and will ask what is happening in this picture. The patient's response would be man coughing. The second step is to reinforce what the patient said, model, and then shape the initial response. So the clinician will say, great, the man is coughing. The third step is to use a WHQ to elicit elaboration of initial response. So you're trying to get the client to use more words. The clinician's stimulus will be, why is he coughing? The patient's response is, man, sick. The fourth step is to reinforce, model, and shape the two patient responses and combine them. So the clinician's feedback will be, great job, the man is coughing into the tissue because he is sick. Second, model and request repetition. So the clinician will say, try and say the whole thing after me. The man is coughing into the tissue because he is sick. The patient's response will be, man coughing, man sick. The clinician feedback is great. After reinforcement, elicit delayed initiation of the combined response. So now the clinician is going to say, now try to say it one more time. And the patient will say, the man coughing because he's sick. So this would be a proper display of the RET treatment because we elicited more utterances from the patient. Candidates for RET. So in general, not all aphasic patients are fit for treatment. This is because some are too weak or ill to have therapy. Some have a very mild case of aphasia and the treatment will not be beneficial, or others have too severe of a case, and in those situations, treatment will not be beneficial either. A person with aphasia who can benefit from expanding a conversation. Effectiveness shown across types of aphasia, including those with aphasia and apraxia. So these are candidates according to Brush-Burgot, Hinckley, Hopper, and Podolsky, who would be candidates for RET. RET works best for patients with Broca's aphasia, conduction aphasia, and anomic aphasia. Treatment works best for individuals that are past the first 6 months after a stroke. So they had a stroke, 6 months passed, and now they start treatment. That's the ideal time to start. The first study is modified RET, application to procedural discourse and personal recount. The purpose of the study is investigating the effects of a modification of RET with speakers with mild to moderate aphasia. The modification involved the participants initiating a procedural discourse and personal recounts rather than narrative discourse. The clinician asked for elaboration specific to the procedure rather than being more general, and the third modification was repeating the procedure was to be mandatory. Method was 3 participants with mild to moderate chronic aphasia due to single episode left middle cerebral artery stroke were treated with modified RET. Correct information units, CIUs, were used as the primary dependent variable. And the results were that there seemed to be significant improvement when RET was applied to procedural discourse as opposed to personal recount condition, which lacked improvement. The second study was modified RET, a systematic extension with replications. The purpose was many positive outcomes of RET have been proven, yet the stimulus generalization effects are not well understood. The study examines and measures the stimulus generalization effects of MRET in a diverse conditions, as well as to further study the effects of MRET when applied to a personal recount condition. Method and procedures were as follows. 6 clients with chronic aphasia were treated with MRET. Production of CIUs were measured in 3 different conditions. Multiple baseline designs were applied to investigate treatment effectiveness. The outcomes and the results were that there were an increase in production of CIUs in response to pictures observed for 11 of the 12 applications of MRET to picture sets. The conclusions were most of the participants showed positive results and gains from MRET applied to treated and untreated pictures. The participant with fluent aphasia did have some positive changes, although there was poor maintenance throughout the duration of the study. Most of the participants did not show improvements when MRET was applied to the personal recount condition.